Brandon Polk asked, where does the name Bear come from? Like all good nicknames, it was gifted to me, bestowed upon me, and it's a derivative of a call sign from my contractor days. How's that? So, yeah, back when I was a doer of things and stuff. So, anyway, you gotta have a way to get a hold of people on the radio. Hey Tim, where are you? Are you by the dead tree? It's much cooler when you're like, Eagle 1-2, this is Grizzly 1-3. Are you by Checkpoint Charlie? Roar! Or whatever, right? So sometimes you just need to roar. And that's where Bear comes from. Let's walk. Or maybe stand still. Should we stand still? How's this? E.H. Nebraska asked, there's something in that bush over there. That's not what he asked. He asked the minimum number of people to form a successful post-SHTF community. Wow. This might be the $100,000 question. Really, it could be a $100 million question depending on how many people we're talking about. The minimum, that's what it says, minimum number of people to form a post-SHTF community. Okay, somebody is going to hit me in the comments of that law that named after a guy whose name escapes me as to the maximum number of people that one can keep track of diligently in their mind, which I believe is about 150 people. That's a good size group of people, especially community-wise, right? We're talking about community. So are we talking about a group of people living on one piece of land in community? Are we talking about groups of people on separate pieces of land that consolidate into community? You know, they meet on Thursdays at what is now the town square to trade squash for beans and, you know, whatever. Those are two different things. I think, well, let's just back into this number, okay? I would want at least 6 people on security. Like, and understand people are going to have to rotate in and out. But I would want at least 6 people on security. I'm talking adults, right? Because a lot of the times with adults, you're gonna get children. You're gonna need probably 2 people just to take care of children, depending on how many you have. We'll just say hypothetically, there's kids. 2 people. Unless the parents take care, maybe, I don't know. I'm literally shooting from the top of my head right now. So 6 and 2. What about farming, full-time agriculture? You definitely want like 2 people that are full-time engaged in livestock, for sure. Like minimum 2. So that gets us to 10. So you want minimum 2 people that are like full-time engaged in gardening and row crops. Like that's their job. That's what you do. Go weed the garden. Really? Yeah, really. Again. But no, we need potatoes. Go do it. So, what do we say? 2, 2, 2, and 6 is 12. Okay. Butcher, baker, candlestick maker. You really do need somebody who knows how to butcher animals, preserve meats, cook. There's probably 2 people on that deal with, you know, preparing meals, cooking meals, butchering animals, smoking meats, whatever. So that's what, 14? I would say sanitation is probably something that everybody should be responsible for on their own. You probably want 2 people that are builders, you know, the full-time builders that work on upkeep right? You know, constantly improving the structures, you know, just what builders do. 16. You're gonna want 2 people probably on energy production, which is probably gonna be firewood, woodcutters, right? And that could be, I mean, depending on where you are and what you're doing, right? That could be a lot of stuff. So that's 18. Blacksmith. Do we have a blacksmith or somebody who knows how to blacksmith? 19. Somebody in charge of the stables. 20. There's a lot to this. I'd say minimum 20, 2 dozen-ish, minimum. It's definitely a beans and bullets thing, right? It's both. I want, forget what you want. I'm not going to tell you what you want. What I want is I want to have lots of food storage, lots of garden, row crops and forage for animals, and lots of animals. And I mean like lots. Whatever the carrying capacity of the land is, I want to be at like 60 to 80% of the carrying capacity right now. And then we can scale up our breeding program if things go sideways. But, you know, having on a small piece of land like this, 4 cows that 1 hayfield will feed, cool. And however many sheep and chickens and goats and all that. Having all of that now, awesome. But that becomes a full-time gig, taking care of them if the grid goes down or whatever. Rotating the animals, you know, if the system goes away, making sure they get fed so they can feed everybody else, right? The gardens, the greenhouse, whatever else you might have, aquaponics, hydroponics, whatever. Your troubleshooter, your maintenance guy, whoever is making sure that you have the batteries are topped off on your solar systems, and who does laundry, and like, who's the town doctor / veterinarian, and like, I think you're in a minimum with, you know, all the different roles and overlap in all the different roles. Minimum 2 dozen people. That's a really good question. It's a very good question. But if you produce all of that food and you have the capability to produce all that food yourself, that has the huge potential to make you a target. Which means you have to be able to protect what you have. So everybody in the town, every able-bodied man and woman of an appropriate age should be able to field a weapon and use it as if their life depended on it, because at that point it will. And I would love it if everybody had a sidearm on them at all times, and everybody had access to a long gun at all times. Some guy, you know, I mean, think about community-wise, in the inner circle, you know, probably, you know, shotguns would be cool, depending on where you're at. In some places, a close shot is 300 yards. And in other places, a long shot is 80 yards. So it all depends, right? But some type of, you know, some type of long gun for everybody and pistols on every hip. Cool. And would be even cooler than that if they were all the same caliber. If everybody had 9mm pistols and 5.56 carbines and 12 gauge shotguns, and the vast majority of the long guns were 308 or 270 or whatever, commonality of caliber, right? But 6 guys on security, or girls, or whatever, rotating in and out of a core 6 guys that's their job, but they can't be switched on 24/7 unless you want them to go crazy. which should be a good idea to have somebody who knows how to play some music and somebody who knows how to make mead, which means you need somebody who knows how to keep bees and get all that honey out so you can turn it into mead, and somebody who knows how to keep yeast and cultivate yeast. Right? Or somebody who can grow potatoes so we can make some vodka in the ethanol truck fuel machine. It's a lot. I think that it definitely proves the point that at scale, right, there's a point of diminishing returns. At some point, I mean, there's a reason why these villages back in the day, before the Industrial Revolution, weren't very big, 150-ish people, because the carrying capacity of the land and the amount of effort required to work that land, right, there's a point of diminishing returns. The return on investment for the amount of energy that you're putting into it can definitely get you sideways. So I would not exceed 150 people if you can help it. But imagine if you had 150 people all working more or less in concert, and every one of those people all had at least a year's worth of food, and every one of those people all had long arms and knew how to use them, and every one of them was trained in basic medical, and every one of them was at least a novice gardener, and every one of them had 4 laying hens and 12 meat birds and a sheep, a goat, or a cow. Imagine that. All of a sudden, you're a lot better prepared than you could be. I mean, a lot better prepared than you could be. You require a certain amount of population to get into specialization of labor full-time. Now, the thing with specialization of labor is that can get like uber boring, right? You have to really enjoy what you do in order to do it all the time. But it's nice. One of the great things about homesteading is if you don't feel like digging holes anymore, cool, go split wood, or go run fence, or feed the animals, or check the well, or whatever, right? There's always something else that you can be doing. I mean, I'm just walking around right now looking at my property and I see 400 things that need to get done right now. So there's always something else to do. So in light of that, you need the minimum quantity of people, I think, to get things done well. To not just stay plateaued, but to actually increase your output, increase your wealth, right? Think about that. Your wealth at that point isn't just how much gold or Bitcoin or fiat currency you have. It's how many sheep do you have? How was your corn yield this past spring? How many acres of red winter wheat did you get planted? Right? That's wealth. Your people, right? Intellectual wealth. A librarian would be a cool thing to have, right? This is a great question because it really gets my mind spinning. I would say 24 people seems like a good bottom floor. Beyond that, top floor, 150 people. What should they do? All the things. Stand by. So, minimum number 24, max number 150. I would say an acre of land per person at a minimum would be great. Their names are Bonnie and Clyde, by the way. Come here, sheepies. That's Bonnie and that's Clyde, and they were named Lobo and Priscilla, But now they're Bonnie and Clyde. So, and if they do their jobs, they'll make babies, and then I'll eat their babies, because that's a cool thing about livestock. So I'd say an acre of land minimum per person. 2 to 5 would be better. Just thoughts. Great question, EH Nebraska. I'm really, this is one of those things where I would love to see what everybody has to say down in the comments, because there's 100 different ways this could go, and a lot of it has to do with the scenario. So I mean, it depends on what you're trying to do. But generally speaking, as long as y'all like each other, many hands make light work. If you have the room to spread out a little bit, when you start to not like each other, everybody can go get some yonder, spend a day or two or a week or a month away from each other, and come on back together and have Sunday supper or whatever. Spiritual leader, that's a very interesting thought. What does everybody believe? How deep with those convictions are you willing to go? It's very, very honest. You come here, we keep Torah. It doesn't matter to me whether or not you don't, because there is one law for the Israelite and the stranger within their gates. If you're within my gate, you do things my way, right? If I come to your place, you have your rules, cool. I'm still not violating Leviticus 11. I'll still keep the food laws. I'm still gonna do my thing, but you have your laws, cool. But what happens when it's time for church? What day is church? What do we talk about at church? Who do we piss off when we talk about it at church? Do we need division in the ranks when there's only 24 of us to make this thing work? Who, if anybody, gets to impose the uniformity of belief? I would say nobody gets to impose that. You need to congregate together like-minded people, which is difficult when you really start to niche down. The more specific you get with things, the smaller your spheres of people get. But having a pastor or a priest or a rabbi or whatever, having the spiritual leader would be good. Good for morale. As long as you don't pit one half of the group against the other half, it's good for morale. But as the spiritual leader, you'd have to walk a fine line, I think, in that situation, between the conviction to speak truth as you understand it and not wanting to truly piss anybody off, right? That's an interesting dynamic. What do? Speak truth in love. That's what I would do. But you're gonna make people mad. Why does that matter so much? Because you're gonna have to see them the next day. That's why. And you're gonna have to see them the next day, or 2 days later, or whatever. You're gonna need them when it's time to raise the barn or slaughter the cow or whatever. So, very interesting dynamic. What about rangers? Who rides the fence line or walks the fence line or whatever? How many horses do you have? Do you have somebody that knows how, who's your farrier? Have you ever trimmed sheep hooves? Like, it goes way down. Like, you can really take this, to the nth degree. Shut up, bird. Who's gonna kill all the roosters? Great question. So, man, it's like, there are probably 16 distinct thoughts in my head right now, all vying for an opportunity to just fly out of my face. And I guess we'll just leave it at that for right now, because what do you do? We don't have 16 hours, although we could. Whole nother story. I think 2 dozen. 2 dozen at a minimum. And then from there, 6 dozen, 12 dozen, I'd say 12 dozen, 150-ish is the max. If you get that many people, you may need to split off. Hey, love you guys go over here. You go 3 miles this way, I'm gonna go 3 miles this way. We'll meet in the middle on Saturday for Shabbat or whatever. Because you also have to think about carrying capacity of the land in less than ideal situations. You know, right now, most of us have the luxury of opening the faucet and water comes out. The more people you get, the more water you're gonna need. Who's handling that? So anyway, great question. Great question. I'm looking forward to what you guys have to say about this. Low end 2 dozen, high end 150-ish. Question mark. Shalom.